All right. Okay, so went ahead and I just restarted my broadcast here. I'm just gonna tweak my screen a little bit so it fits correctly here. And I was just having some stream errors there. Okay, so that should fix that. What is that error message right there all about? Let's say that's a Unity error. Okay, so it should be good. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take myself here and pull me over here a little bit. Alright. So, today I want to talk about the demo itself. And show you guys how we're going to build all these stuff together. So, here I have the demo sequence set up, and the first bit, all the ones with the 0 presets right here, they're all just menu items. And then we come down the levels themselves, and those are numerically laid out. ABC, ABC, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those will probably change, but just note every time you change the actual name of the level, if you're referencing when you're loading something, if you're referencing the name and not the number, that will affect obviously what it's gonna look for, versus if you just mix the numbers around. It's usually easier, but it's not as solid in terms of the build and the stability, because you can just accidentally reorganize the layout of this, and it can screw up the whole flow. So I try to use the naming conventions here, and I try not to change them, which is why I'm very specific about making sure they're detailed appropriately, so I don't move around the wrong ones. And I just started using this funny little symbol here. I don't know what you call that one, but instead of a dash, it's like a little squiggly dash. So it's a unique symbol, but it seems to be referenceable within the code, so let's use it for now. So what I was saying earlier in my last stream, which I restarted, was let's go ahead and just start the core setup of the demo here. And one thing to note, that you have to have the stuff referenced checked here, so it won't load stuff even if it's scripted correctly if it's not accessible in the build. But it should go to our mini demo here. And I'll go ahead and just pause it, the mini demo, and we can go over some stuff that's happening here. Okay, so in the actual release in March, this will probably go directly to the map page. But for the demo itself, I'm just trying to build out some of the basic fundamental aspects of the legal jargon you need to include, the credits, some informational stuff for people that may not know how to use it and may not understand the interface itself, and along with showcasing our market and getting in the in-app purchases in place, the advertising, and a lot of the other promotional aspects of the build it here. So right now these are a couple buttons. The only one that's working is the play demo button. I'll show you that in a second. The marketplace is going to pull up the market, obviously, and that's just, and where you're going to use credits. So for the demo, I'm going to offer a credit system, and for the most part, people aren't going to purchase more credits, but the hope is that they enjoy it and then they go in there and get some more credits that they can download, or they can earn more coins by advertisement, watching ads. And we will set these up. These are other things. This is going to be our how to play. This how to play is our quick start screen right here. The market is going to propagate within this scene, so that's not some level. And the earn more key coins is probably going to do that as well. But the credits and the legal, as I said before, is going to be a it's going to be an in-browser app experience, so they stay within the application. And one thing I was looking into a little while ago was this in-app web browser right here. And this is another Peter. Peter, if you watch this, it looks like you have another Peter out there. See, that's the weird keying thing that the blue screen does. That I don't have problems with my green screen, but you'll notice It's doing weird things with me, so let's go ahead and just see if we can fix that real quick. Go in Chroma, and I don't know why it's doing that, but I think it has to do with the lighting of the room with the blue. So not as good as a green screen. Obviously that's why green screens are more popular, but it's good enough, I guess, for me on screen to show you guys. So anyway, so we have this in-app purchasing component that I'm going to include in the master build eventually, but I'm not going to focus on that just yet. I'm going to focus more on the build here. So this is our basic menu screen. So we'll go ahead and play this again. And then now, essentially, when you click this, oh, I'm sorry, you have to click the play button here. That's going to load this module here. And this is where I think it's going to get screwed up because I did a bunch of naming here. So let's go ahead and pause this again. And I'm going to do another quick little fix of the chroma key because it is driving me bonkers. This is one of those things where, alright, here. Alright, so that should be better. Okay, I'm yellow again though, huh? Alright, looks better. Okay, so we know that it got screwed up somewhere along the naming convention here. So I'm going to go ahead to where this loads and make sure this is all correct. So I'm going to go to the mini demo menu, which is number 2 on our list here. Open that up. It's going to bring us back to the menu screen here. And we have to look at the play button here. And one thing to note that I think I noted in a previous stream is you can sometimes reference where the coding is, where the scripts are taking action by this playmaker icon here that gets added. It's not always the case. Sometimes I'm using the Unity scripting and sometimes using third-party C# scripts. But in this case, I am using Playmaker. For a lot of the game UI components, I just like a lot of the the extensions, and it's just very useful in terms of all the stuff you can pull in with Playmaker. In terms of the other methods, use a lot of different specific scripts. Playmaker kind of brings it all together there. So I do like using it when possible. It does add a little bit more extra weight on top of the build, but not too much. Surprisingly, it's not that bad. So this one is just the Oasis Core FSM here. And FSM stands for Functioning State Machine, and I'm pretty sure that is a Playmaker terminology. I don't think that is a industry standard here, but I do know that this button is a canvas element, and I do also know that and so what I can do here is I can just, and I highly recommend when you're developing to just keep the window Playmaker in the Unity screen. Otherwise, you're going to find that a lot of times you're going to be going after it and dragging stuff in it, and it's going to be lost behind the Unity screen, similar to what you do with the build, this build window. So I usually just drag the build down there and grab it when I need it. But it's highly useful just keeping it in there. So just walking through a few of these functionings here. This is not relevant to what we're doing, but this is essentially checking to see if we've already seen the screen, and it knows to destroy the object if we already loaded this. So for instance, if you're showing if somebody's loading the app for the first time, you may want to show some kind of informational screen or something that showcases what you've done. And then it has to cache, or not necessarily cache, but it has to save that state within the application somewhere in the core files. So this just does a check using a variable, and then it knows not to show that the next time. So that's what that's doing there. But here we have just our simple loading screen. No, this isn't it either. This is going to be just a fade. So it's on the play button here. So if I go in the main menu It's a little bit deep, so you do have to definitely sometimes dig. And you see we have a whole bunch of component icons here. So we're looking specifically, and I do have to rename this a little bit because there's a couple redundancies here that this Playmaker Live one, if I just toggle it on off, you can see is actually this button that I've disabled. And you know it's disabled because I've disabled it here. And the reason why I've disabled it is because I'm using this button to reference that. But in the future, we probably will use this button directly if we ditch this, and there's a scrollable menu here. So I've kind of over-engineered this, or over-developed this one menu, and then because it's the mini menu for the demo, I've cut back a lot of the stuff it can do, which is why I have all this stuff here, but it's not working. Or it's not, I shouldn't say it's not working, it's not activated. But you can see here the play button here is referencing, it is going to access a bunch of stuff for us. So without getting into too much detail of how this works, this is using the Unity UI to load certain scripts, but I'm also using Playmaker, so it has to use an extension. So there's a few things you have to add in order for this to work here. First thing, I have to add this proxy script. It's called a Playmaker UGUI component proxy script here, and all that's doing is saying, "Hey, Unity, when you click this, look for any Playmaker actions that are happening on this game object." And so it's essentially a bridge that communicates, has Unity communicate with the Playmaker core scripting engine itself. And on top of that, we have to have a UGUI. So if I just go ahead and just, sometimes this is hidden, so I just search for it. I embed all the core scripts and functionalities within the Oasis core game object here. So you can see we have added this Playmaker UGUI along with the Playmaker GUI. Just know that you have to have both these in here. Specifically, if you're using the interface like buttons, you have to have the UGUI. If you're using Playmaker in general, you just have this one. I usually keep them both in, no matter what, because it's better to have them and not need them than not have them and not know what's going on. It's kind of similar to if you don't have an event manager in your scene and you don't know why your buttons aren't working. I can't tell you how many times it's happened to me where I'm like, it's event system right here. And this can actually probably get moved up to the core, but I just leave it in there for now. But again, there's been a number of times when I don't know why it's not loading. I'm like, why isn't this working? It's just because I don't have this event system activated. Maybe it's like turned off. It's still in there, but I've disabled it for some reason. Like maybe I don't want to see the canvas. I'm like, why isn't this working? And so in the future, I will probably get everything always on 100% of the time within the core game object here for all the game communication and just the system communication in general here. But back to the build information here. So if I go into the demo menu, open this all the way up, all these buttons can do something, but we're interested in this play button here. Let's just walk through it real quick. So the third aspect to getting a button to load within the GameMaker visual scripting engine, I think is what you would call it, is you have a listening state and then you have an active state. So the listening state is the start state here. Essentially, this is where this specific FSM is saying, all right, I'm waiting for something to happen here. And then when you click on it, it's looking for a click event here using a variable. So when it clicks on this, it's going to load a bunch of different actions in unison, or in hierarchy of different actions that happen here. So the first one is you click on it, it immediately is going to destroy this, right? And it's going to load. It's going to load this, and this is just basically a common problem with UIs in applications or in software in general is the double click, right? And so if somebody clicks on something twice, usually it loads the script or loads the action or what you're asking it to do twice, and that can drastically screw up the flow. So what you usually want to do is you immediately want to destroy the function or the variables that are going to load the component when you click. So the first thing you immediately want to do is just delete whatever action is being activated when you click something. So that's why that is immediately deleting or destroying this component here. And specifically, it's looking for a UI button, not a game object. So that's a unique thing that I've set up. And then secondly, it's going to activate this extra screen, and that's just giving some feedback, some visual feedback for the user or the person engaging in the content, saying, all right, this is doing something, it's not just frozen. And these are probably two of the most important variables you have to think about when you're talking about UI interfaces and experiencing some kind of content here. And then this third component here is just the wait state. This is just for an ease of mind. This stuff is all these actions happen in a fraction of a second. So I just add some downtime for kind of like the human nature of when stuff should change, and I guess that's why this is here. And 3 seconds is just a one. If you count out 1, 2, 3, that's a good time frame to start with. Okay, so after 3 seconds, it's going to fade out. And again, I guess the 3 seconds gives our little loading sequence a little time to do stuff. And then after that, for a second, it's going to fade out. Then it's going to activate. Okay, so this is interesting. This can be very confusing if you have not built this from the very beginning. If you're taking this on. And again, this is naming conventions, specifically me duplicating functioning game objects or states and not renaming them appropriately. Because I don't have to, I kind of know what's going on, but for anybody that's taking this on, it's going to be challenging. So eventually we will have to rename these, but you can see that there's a second hashtag loading level here, but it's different. So when I toggle it on, this is the loading window, not the loading module within the level here. So again, this is all just masking what's happening in the back end. And when we use a middleman level, I call it, it's like essentially a level that loads the next level between the menu. It's using asynchronous loading, and that means it loads everything in the background before it gives you the next state. And if you didn't have something to mask that or something come up doing something, it would look like it's frozen. People would be like, this is crap, it's slow, it's bogging down my phone. And so we have to figure out ways to entertain the user. And usually you'll do that by a loading screen, which is the most common thing. Sometimes you'll have a mini game, sometimes you'll have an ad that pops up, which is also going to be a common technique we'll use down the road. But you don't want to shove an ad in somebody's face before they get to use your product. Otherwise, they're going to be pissed off and they're not going to use it. So the loading screen, again, and this is just a very generic, basic one. Eventually, we're going to build in hints and tips and tricks and maybe videos or something here that's going to be more interesting, maybe part of the storyline as we build this out. But the functioning state of all this is appropriately in place. So, if I go here, back into our play button, after that loads, right after we turn this screen on, which is on, and I have to make sure I am careful not to keep it on. Go back in the play button. Then it loads our level. And it doesn't load necessarily our level, it loads our loading level, right? Because if we went from two very, very heavy levels that are using a lot of the memory, it would immediately crash. So we have to essentially load this stuff, or we have to load a blank level that has nothing in it so that it can load the level, then wipe all the stuff that was from the previous level. And then once we do that, we can actually take the empty level and load the very heavy level that's going to have all this stuff. And this is something that I've kind of just embraced as as a standard for when I develop a lot of this stuff. It's not something that I was taught or learned. It's just something that seems to work for me. And I'm assuming that this is what all the other development app gaming companies would do in terms of loading a bunch of prefabricated stuff. And it's so kind of how I do it. I call it like a middleman loading level, whatever you want to call it. So this right here, we have to double check and reference our naming conventions here to make sure that they match up. So just looking real quick, that seems to be appropriate, but I can tell you what's not appropriate is going to be, or what is not named correctly is going to be probably the live name. So what I'll usually do before I load in is I'll just copy this knowing that's the next one in line. And again, this is why it's important you name it like in order, because it just keeps them in order within the folder itself, and it gives you a little bit more sanity in terms of organizing all this stuff here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and save out the mini demo. It's in the state that we want it to be. And then now that we're in the loading level, I'm going to just drag my build over to the screen. I know you can't see it, but and you know, for a level like this, I don't really need to see the scene. I just keep the playmaker up because that's actually more useful for me. And these loading levels are very easy to navigate because they're very light. Like I said, there's nothing in them. This is a basic camera. Lighting you can really ditch. The event system you have to have. And because it's not using Unity or a Playmaker GUI, I don't have to have the UGUI in here. But like I said, in the future, I'll probably just have the Oasis Core Game Object, have all that stuff in here in case we create more sophisticated methods within these loading levels. But you can see it has one simple function here. It just says load this damn level when you get here. So I'll click the load level, and what's interesting is I didn't look like this was loading, but it actually seems to be. Oh no, that's what happened. So you may miss this the first time if you're working fast, but you notice how it's an A instead of a B. And what I had originally done is I just had kept these all the same number and then had different letters, which I don't know why I did that. It didn't make sense at all. But now this is going to be a B. Okay, so the B level, we'll go ahead and save that out. And you'll notice what just happened there. This is a common thing I do. I always make changes in Playmaker, and I will press Command Save while I'm in this little field right here, and that will actually add the S, and then so usually it screws up the load. So what I have to do is I click out and then I save. So just keep in mind that if you have this and then you say Command C, it's going to think you're adding that character in there, and it's going to screw up your script there. So click out, Command C or Command S, and now this should load to our level there. And so what's going to happen next, which is new, is this portal level, which is a new thing I'm doing within the sequences. Every single level and part of the storyline for the demo, you have to find and create and craft certain things to move to the next level items, and then the series of events that you go through build up to the suspense of the final level here. So it's kind of fun. It's a fun little thing I've added. But let's go ahead and just start from the very beginning. I'm not going to do this every single time. If you have to go through all these, it's definitely a pain in the butt, but I do like to experience it like I'm a user, and look for quirks like, you know, if it fades out and then it comes back on. It's important to notice little things like that. So it fades on appropriately, shows the logo. It fades out, very smooth. Maiden 4 point comes on. You have a little loading gear, smooth. And then this fades on, and this should be spinning and that fades on. Okay, so that looks good. And so now if I click this, actually 1, 2, 3, fades out, loading level comes on, and if I look up top, which you can't see it, you can see what level is actually loaded in the moment. Okay, so everything is great there except for the fact that I have the info window up. And this is an updated kind of quest window that I've created, and these items will be updated before I release it. I've just kind of worked around this a little bit. I had some issues with people playing this where they didn't know to scroll down, which for me it's kind of obvious, but I guess if you're not used to this kind of stuff, you may not know what to do. So I added this little animated arrow that clearly says scroll down, click. Alright, so we got our mini menu. It's playing around with all the components here. So everything's good. The only thing that needs to be fixed there, so we're going to do this one more time, is I'm going to just load the live Palm Beach here. And I'm going to toggle off our info. And so the info screen itself is in the game canvas. And, you know, this is something new I decided to do. Before I was like, well, let's just start with the info. But, again, I know this because I created it. And so I guess for me it's second nature. But if you're just picking this up for the first time and you have no recollection or knowledge of how to use it or how to engage it, you have to have everything kind of handed to you in baby steps. So I'm going to have this screen propagate after you load in, so it clearly is defined or shows that it's an informational screen that pops up. And then maybe I'll do a fun little scale that instead of it just appearing. And that's something we can add afterwards. So again, I use the build menu usually to navigate this level here, and I'll save that out. So in all the scenes, it should be completely black. And if it's not, that means that something isn't appropriately added in there. Okay, so I'll drag this down. We can do this once more. A little stuffy. Okay, we load it up. Alright, so you can see we have our mini demo menu loaded. I'll click that, and if you watch the top there, you can see how it will change. Now it's 3A load, Palm Beach, which is good, and then it should be 3B live. Good. Okay, so now you can kind of see why I disabled the info window there. I like that. I like how the camera zooms in into our player here, and then that fades in. I think that's really slick. I think it looks really good on a phone, especially when you're keying out the background. Now with the green, you can't really see that, but in the real world, when that happens, it's kind of like the whole level is propagating in front of you. It's a really cool look and feel. I like it, so I'm gonna go with it. So that's why we have this start toggled off. And so now, if you're in the device here, you read through this stuff, and I'm having some issues with the quest system here. Specifically, the bridge isn't working, so I might ditch our quest system altogether and just create a custom quest system using Playmaker. We are using the inventory system still, because it just does so much stuff for us that it would be it'd be silly not to keep it here. But we don't necessarily need the quest system. So, for instance, when you go up here and you click on our guy here, I might ditch this altogether because I can't use the bridge. There's something wrong with the bridge for now. But you can see we can navigate, negotiate the terrain here, and when I build in a lot of the events for each level, which I have set up. I just haven't activated them, so I'm kind of cheating right now and going straight to the next. So I know this is where our portal is, and this is set up with another time sequence to where this is going to load our portal scene here. So this is where we left off, and this is where I'm going to start working on this, and then take this, what I create here, and bring it into the other levels, so I have to redo it a bunch of times. So essentially, this is going to load, or this should load our 3C Portal Palm Beach level here. And it doesn't, because I've changed this as relatively new, but if I click this, I'll just show you what it will do. So it's going to load probably an ad. Oh, that's what it does here. So we have to change that. We actually want the ad to come on after the portal scene. Otherwise, it may turn people off. Okay, so you close the ad, it loads a level, and this is probably going to spin infinite time, because doesn't know what to load next. It's broken. So essentially, that's where we left off here. So I'm going to go into my live beach level now. Excuse me. Okay, so because we're in the live beach, we do need to see the scene here. And the build menu, I can just tuck down there, and again, this is what I find is the best thing. I kind of keep it so I can just drag it. And in all the scenes, I find the easiest way to go to navigate to the portal is I made its own separate game object within scene objects, and I just hashtag it so I can find it and it stands out, and I'll use my little hand and zoom in, and I'll spin around. Alright, so this is where we left off, and this is really where I gotta fix this and complete this today so I can duplicate this and use this in all the other levels. So I'm gonna stop this stream, and then I'm gonna start a new stream in a couple of minutes, talking about the changes we'll make here and show you a little bit of the portal scenes, and then we can break this up in a few different streams today. So see you in a bit.